Hey there, it's Miss Hall again. Alright, so we're going to look at number 1 on page 14. So the first thing we have to notice is that we always look at our leading coefficient. So for our first term, is there a coefficient other than 1? If there's not, it's a lot easier. So when you factor a trinomial, you always end up with 2 binomials. So the first thing I always do is I set up my parentheses, 2 sets of parentheses, ready to have 2 binomials inside there. The second step is I look at my factors of my last term, which is 8. So my factors of 8 are 1 times 8 and 2 times 4. Once you list all of your factors, then you're going to ask yourself, which set of factors can you add to equal your middle term, your middle coefficient? If I add the 1 plus the 8, I would get 9, so that's not going to work. And if I add 2 plus the 4, I'd get 6. So this is the factor that I'm going to choose. So first step is I'm going to break apart my x squared and bring it as x times x. If you think about doing the multiplication, x times x would equal x squared, which is why we break that up. Now for our 2 and our 4, we're going to put those in for our our second term in the binomials. Now you have to ask yourself, when you add them, you want them to be positive, and when you multiply them, you also want them to be positive. If everything's positive, we just keep everything as plus in the middle. And to double check ourselves, we look at our inner 2. So think about FOIL, first, outer, inner, last. We look at the inner 2 and multiply the coefficients. So the 4 times my imaginary 1 would be 4. And then my 1 times my 2 would be 2. If I add these up, again, I should get 6. Therefore, this is the correct factors. Now looking at number 6, it's a little bit different because we have a leading coefficient that is not 1. The leading coefficient in this case is 6. So we're going to have to take a look at the factors of both 6 and 2. So factors of 6 are 1 times 6 and 2 times 3. Notice that our sign for our 2 is negative, so we're going to look at factors of negative 2. Obviously, I have 1 times negative 2, or negative 1 times 2. So I can choose either one of those. It does make a difference on which one's positive versus negative, because when you do your FOIL later on to check yourself, if you wanted to, you'll see how they'll cancel out differently if the signs are off. So again, first step, I'm going to set up my parentheses for my 2 binomials. Now this part here is a little bit more of a trial and error kind of thing. We know we're going to have to break apart our x. However, since we have a leading coefficient, we will have to plug in our factors of 6 in these spots. And then our factors of 2 will go in these spots. So we know for sure we're going to have the numbers 1 and 2. I'm going to go ahead and plug those in there. We'll determine if it's positive or negative in just a second. So again, when I look at my inner terms and I look at my outer terms, I want them to add or subtract because we're dealing with negatives this time. We want them to equal our middle term, which is 1. And we want it to be a positive 1. That is our end goal. So if I plugged in, let's say these factors here, the 1 and the 6. If I do 1 and 6, my 1 times the 6 would be 6, and my 1 times the 2 would be 2. There's no way I could add or subtract those to equal 1, so those are not the correct ones. Now if I switch it and I do 6 and 1, 1 times 1 is 1, 6 times 2 is 12. Again, no way to add or subtract to equal 1. So I'm going to skip this factor, and I'm going to look at my 2 and my 3. So if I plug in 2 and 3, 3 times 1 would be 3. 2 times 2 would be 4. There is a difference of 1. However, we want our answer to be positive 1, and one of these have to be negative because we're looking at a negative 2. It would have to be a positive 4 minus 3 would equal positive 1. Therefore, my negative is going to go with my inner, and my positive is going to go with my outer term. So again, we got to double check ourselves. The 2 times the 3 up front is equal to our leading coefficient. Our negative 1 times the 2 is equal to our constant, And when we check it with the inner and the outer, they add up to be the middle coefficient. So therefore, we are correct, and that is our final answer right here. Sorry about that. This is our final answer. I hope this helps. Let me know if not. Have a great one.